For years after my husband disappeared, a dog brought me the jacket he was wearing on the day he vanished. The morning mist clung to the porch, as thick and white as it had been in that autumn morning when Miguel left for his usual hike along the ridge. I was pouring my coffee, 2 mugs, always two, even after all this time, when I saw him. He was a large shepherd mix, lean but not starved, with intelligent eyes that seemed to hold a quiet wisdom. It wasn't just his presence that caught my eye, but what he held so carefully in his mouth. A faded blue jacket, its rugged waterproof material worn at the edges, but unmistakable. My coffee cup slipped from my hand. I barely registered the sound of it shattering against the wooden floorboards. That jacket was Miguel's favorite. He had worn it the day he disappeared. My hands trembled as I slid open the porch door. The dog didn't bolt. He stood his ground, those piercing eyes locked on mine, while behind him, the dense forest that had swallowed my husband 4 years ago seemed to hold its breath. "Hey, boy," I murmured, my voice thick. "Where did you get that?" The dog padded forward, his steps deliberate, and I could see the caked mud on his paws and the burrs tangled in his fur. He had clearly traveled a long way. As I reached for the jacket, a flood of memories washed over me. Miguel pulling it on that morning, kissing me goodbye, promising to be back before dusk. The 3 days of searching, the rescue teams combing the mountainside, the helicopters circling overhead, the painful shift from a rescue to a recovery, and finally, the lonely funeral with an empty casket, because the mountain had kept its secret. Until now. The dog gently placed the jacket in my hands and then sat, as if his mission was complete, but his story was not yet over. I sank onto the porch steps, clutching the familiar fabric. A small piece of paper fluttered out from one of the pockets. My fingers shook as I carefully unfolded it. The handwriting was Miguel's, though the ink was faded and water-stained, blurring parts of the message. It began, "My dearest Clara, if you're reading this, I'm in trouble. I took a wrong turn. The cave system is deeper than—" The rest was illegible, except for the final line. "I love you forever." I pressed the jacket to my face, inhaling deeply. Beneath the damp scent of earth and decay, there was a faint trace of Miguel's cologne, the sandalwood I'd given him for our last anniversary. The dog let out a soft whine, nudging my hand with his nose. "Where did you come from?" I asked, and my fingers found an old leather collar beneath his thick fur. The tags were gone, but something about it felt strangely familiar. Then I remembered. During the search, there were stories of a stray shepherd seen shadowing the rescue teams. Volunteers had tried to catch him, thinking he might lead them to Miguel, but he always kept his distance, watching from the edge of the woods. I stood, pulling the jacket tight against my chest. "Do you want to come in?" I asked. The dog followed me into the kitchen, his claws clicking softly on the hardwood floor. As I swept up the broken pieces of my mug, he sat quietly, his amber eyes never leaving my face. There was something almost human in his gaze, an intelligence that made me wonder how much he truly understood. I called João Silva, the former lead detective on Miguel's case. He'd retired last year but had given me his personal number, telling me to call if anything ever came up. After a few rings, his deep, steady voice answered. "Clara? Is everything all right?" "It's the jacket, João. Someone found Miguel's jacket." There was a long pause. "I'll be there in 20 minutes. While I waited, I examined the jacket more closely. Though weathered, it was largely intact. There were no tears, bouquets from an animal attack, no bloodstains. The zipper still worked. In one pocket, I found Miguel's chapstick, a half-eaten granola bar wrapper, and his old compass, its needle stubbornly pointing north. The dog watched me inspect every item, tilting his head as if he had something to add. I found myself talking to him, telling him about Miguel, about that day, and his focused attention made it feel like a conversation. He wasn't just my husband, I confessed, wiping away a tear. He was my best friend. Miguel and I had met in college, studying environmental science. He used to joke that he fell for me on our first geology field trip, when I could identify metamorphic rocks faster than the professor. At the word rocks, the dog perked up and let out a soft, woof. What is it, boy? Do you know something? A knock at the door interrupted us. João Silva stood on the porch, looking just as I remembered him. Graying hair, kind eyes, and a slight limp from an old injury. His eyebrows shot up when he saw the dog. Well, look who finally came down from the mountain, he said, his voice calm. You know this dog? I asked, watching as João knelt, wincing slightly. The shepherd approached him cautiously, but without fear. Not personally, João said, running a hand over the worn collar. But every search and rescue team in this county knows him. They call him the guardian of the ridge. Been helping lost hikers find their way for years. Some say he used to be a rescue dog himself, one who lost his handler. João's gaze then fell on the jacket I was still clutching. May I? He asked. He took it and examined it with the meticulous precision that had made him one of the best. His fingers traced the seams, checked the pockets, and studied the wear patterns. Clara, this jacket hasn't been out in the elements for 4 years, he said, and my heart began to pound. What do you mean? Look at the decay. Even for durable material, 4 years of exposure would have done more damage. I'd say this has been exposed for a few months, a year at most. I sat down, stunned by the implication. The dog moved to my side, resting his head on my knee as if to comfort me. It meant that wherever Miguel had been, his jacket had been sheltered from the weather for at least 3 years. João pulled out his phone, scrolling through old case files. You said the note mentioned a cave system? I handed him the damp paper. As he studied it, I ran my fingers through the dog's thick fur, grounding myself in his steady presence. Something never sat right with this case, João said finally. We focused on the main trails because that's where Miguel said he was going. But his car, it was parked near the old mine entrance, the one they sealed up back in the 90s. As an environmental scientist, maybe Miguel wasn't just hiking that day. Maybe he was investigating something. Suddenly, the dog stood up, his ears pricked. He walked to the door and looked back at us, an unspoken command in his posture. I think he wants us to follow him, João said, getting to his feet. I grabbed Miguel's jacket, my hiking boots, and a flashlight. One part of me wanted to run out the door and chase down the truth that had haunted me for 4 years. Another part was terrified of what I might find. Clara, João put a hand on my arm. The truth isn't always what we hope for. Are you sure you want to do this? I looked at the shepherd waiting patiently by the door, then down at the jacket in my hands. Miguel is out there, João. He left me a message, and this dog is trying to tell us something. I have to know. João nodded, pulling out his phone to alert the local rescue team and give them our potential location. I packed a small bag with water, a first aid kit, and Miguel's old GPS. The dog watched my every move, his eyes glowing with an intense focus. When I was ready, he let out a single, soft bark and trotted down the steps toward the tree line. Before we entered the woods, I looked back at my house. Our house. The porch where we'd spent countless evenings watching the sun set over the mountains. It felt like a lifetime ago. "I'm coming, Miguel," I whispered. "Just hold on." The dog led the way, his tail held high like a beacon as storm clouds gathered over the ridge, as if nature itself was holding its breath. He moved with a quiet purpose, following some invisible path through the dense undergrowth. Joao followed close behind me, occasionally marking our route on his phone. The morning fog had burned off, but the dark clouds promised rain. "He's taking us toward the Devil's Spine," Joao noted, referring to a treacherous rocky ridge that local hikers avoided. It was riddled with the old mining tunnels that crisscrossed the mountain. I clutched Miguel's jacket tighter. The last time I'd been on these trails was during the search, when hope was still a burning ember, and every snapping twig could have been a sign. Now, the forest felt different, less menacing, almost as if it was ready to give up its secrets. The shepherd stopped abruptly, his nose twitching. He led us through a thicket of mountain laurel into a clearing I'd never seen before. There, half hidden by overgrowth, was a rock face with a dark opening at its base. "This isn't on any map," Joao said, frowning at his phone, which now had no signal. The old mine records said all the entrances were sealed. The dog let out a sharp bark that echoed off the rocks. He trotted to the opening and looked back at us. "Follow me." "Wait," I murmured, a thought striking me. I pulled out Miguel's old compass from the jacket pocket. The needle was spinning wildly, the way it does near large mineral deposits. "What if Miguel found something here?" Joao mused. "Something worth investigating off the books?" Thunder rumbled in the distance as he inspected the entrance. "There are fresh tool marks on these rocks," he said, running his fingers along the edge. "Someone's been here recently." My heart hammered in my chest. Recently enough to leave a jacket behind. Before Joao could say more, the dog plunged into the darkness without hesitation. I switched on my flashlight, its beam cutting through the gloom, revealing old support timbers, half-buried mining cart tracks, and footprints in the dust. "Clara, wait!" Joao called, but I was already moving down the tunnel. The air grew cold, thick with the smell of wet earth and something metallic. The white tip of the shepherd's tail glowed in my light, leading us deeper into the heart of the mountain. The tunnel split several times, but our guide never faltered. I spotted a modern climbing rope tied off on an old beam. "Someone has definitely been here recently," Joao said, his flashlight highlighting a section of the wall that was scored with tool marks. Discarded sample bags were scattered nearby. "Looks like a geological survey." Suddenly, the dog froze, the fur on his back standing on end. A sound echoed from deeper within the tunnels. It wasn't falling rocks or dripping water. It was something else. A sound, bass, that stole the breath from my lungs. It was faint music, almost inaudible, like a radio with a dying battery. And it was playing the song that had been on our kitchen radio the morning Miguel disappeared. My hand trembled as I steadied myself against the tunnel wall. What a wonderful world. Miguel had been humming it that morning, making fun of my clumsy dance moves as we made breakfast together. "Maybe we should wait for backup," Joao said, his voice tense. But the dog was already moving toward the music, and I followed, pulled along by an invisible thread. The tunnel opened into a large chamber, an old mining cavern. Our flashlights swept across the space, revealing modern equipment scattered about. geological testing instruments, a battery-powered lantern, empty water bottles, and propped against a rock wall, a small portable radio. The dog walked to a narrow fissure in the far wall, nosing at the ground. Joao's light illuminated something metallic, a professional climbing harness, half buried under a small rockfall. "Miguel?" I whispered, my knees going weak. He had been here. He had been investigating something in this cave, something he didn't want anyone to know about. Joao was examining the climbing gear. "This rig is for descent," he said. "There must be a vertical shaft nearby." As if in answer, the dog barked, the sound sharp and echoing in the chamber. He stood beside a dark opening we hadn't noticed, partially hidden by old mining debris. As we approached, we felt a current of cold air rising from it. Joao aimed his flashlight down into the shaft. The flashlight's beam was swallowed by the darkness, but the distant sound of running water was unmistakable. "There's a subterranean river system down there," I said, my geologist's mind racing with possibilities. Miguel had always spoken of unusual mineral formations in this region, patterns that defied all known geological maps. He believed there could be a natural phenomenon so rare it could change everything. Suddenly, the dog let out an urgent whine. "We need to decide now," Joao said, glancing at his watch. "The rescue team won't be here for at least an hour, and if this rain gets any worse, these tunnels could flood." I was already shrugging into Miguel's jacket, checking the pockets one last time when my fingers brushed against something I'd missed. A small pen drive, sealed in a waterproof case. "Joao, look," I said, handing it to him. "Miguel left this for someone to find. He knew something." A louder crack of thunder reverberated through the rock, and beads of water began to seep down the tunnel walls. The dog barked more insistently, torn between the gaping maw of the shaft and the path leading back to safety. "There's more climbing gear here," Joao noted, sweeping his flashlight across a recess in the wall. "A coiled rope with carabiners. But Clara, this is madness. We have to wait for the rescue team." I was already examining the harness we'd found. It was Miguel's size, but packed with it was a smaller one that would fit me perfectly. "He knew I would come," I murmured. "He knew I would eventually understand." The dog pressed against my leg, looking up at me with those piercing eyes, and in that instant, my decision was made. "Joao, take the pen drive and the radio back to the surface. Give them to the authorities. If something happens to me, at least they'll have proof of what Miguel found." "Clara, I can't let you," he began, but I cut him off. "I'm not asking for permission." I was already fastening the harness around my waist, checking the anchor points Miguel had installed years ago, built to last. That dog didn't just bring me Miguel's jacket to lead me here. There was something down there, something Miguel thought was worth every risk. The rain began to fall harder, its rhythm echoing through the tunnels like a distant drum. Joao looked at me, then at the dog, and finally at the tunnel leading to safety. "1 hour," he declared. "If you're not back in 1 hour, I'm bringing the entire rescue squad down here, rain or shine." I gave him a quick, firm hug and turned to the shaft. The dog stood calmly at my side as I set up the rope system. "You coming with me, boy?" I asked. He gave a single, deliberate wag of his tail and moved closer to the edge as I prepared to descend into the blackness. Miguel's voice echoed in my mind. "Sometimes, the greatest discoveries aren't what we seek, but what finds us." I took a deep breath and began my descent into the mountain's secrets. The descent felt endless. The beam of my headlamp was lost in the void, while the sound of rushing water grew steadily louder. Somehow, the dog kept pace, scrambling down narrow ledges I hadn't even seen, his eyes glowing almost supernaturally in the light. After about 30 feet, the shaft opened into another chamber. This one was clearly natural. Immense crystalline formations glittered in my headlamp's beam, unlike anything I had ever seen in all my years as a geologist. The dog's paws made soft clicking sounds on the rocky floor as he led me deeper into the cavern. "Oh my God, Miguel," I whispered. "You found it." The formations weren't just beautiful, they were impossible. Their mineral structure suggested extreme pressure conditions that shouldn't exist here. If what I was seeing was real, it could rewrite geology textbooks. It was then that I noticed a campsite, tucked into a natural alcove. A small tent was surrounded by scientific equipment, solar-powered batteries connected to subterranean lighting rigs, and a makeshift table covered in notebooks filled with Miguel's unmistakable handwriting. Everything was coated in a fine layer of crystal dust, but preserved by the cave's constant temperature. My hands trembled as I opened the most recent journal. The entry read, Day 147. The crystal data continues to defy explanation. The energy readings are off the charts. If my calculations are correct, the mineral composition could revolutionize energy storage, but someone... I remembered Miguel's words. I have to protect the site. I have to warn Clara. Suddenly, the dog whined, drawing my attention to a side passage leading from the main chamber. I followed him, and the sound of rushing water intensified. The passage opened onto a subterranean river, its dark water churning with frightening speed. That's when my headlamp caught something that made my blood run cold. Another tent, newer than Miguel's, stood on the far side of the river, accompanied by fresh footprints in the crystalline sand. "Ah, so you finally found it," a voice echoed from behind me. I turned slowly. A man stood in the passage we had just come through, his flashlight aimed directly at my face. Behind him, two other figures emerged from the shadows. "Dr. Clara Nunes," the man said. "Your husband's research notes suggested you would eventually find this place. We didn't expect the dog to be quite so helpful, however." The shepherd growled softly, placing himself between me and the strangers. "Who are you?" I demanded, though I already had my suspicions. "Let's just say we represent interests that would prefer this discovery remain a secret. Your husband wasn't very cooperative." My heart hammered in my chest. "Where is he?" The man's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Why don't you come with us? I believe it's time for a family reunion." The dog's growl deepened, echoing off the cave walls. I backed toward the wall, my mind racing. Miguel's last notes finally made sense. He wasn't lost. He had been hiding. With a voice steadier than I felt, I declared, "You've kept him here for 4 years?" The leader let out a cold laugh. Initially, Dr. Nunes resisted. He refused to share his research, insisted on following protocol. He threatened to go public until we discovered his vulnerability. He pointed a finger at me. "You!" The dog surged forward, the hair on its back raised, while the two men behind the leader shifted uncomfortably. One of them muttered, "That's the cave dog, the one we could never catch, the one that kept guiding hikers to the upper entrance." The other added, "Maybe we should just leave it." The leader snapped back. "Dr. Nunes's wife is our key to ensuring his full cooperation." The dog stood its ground, and I watched its calm movements, its piercing eyes. Then I remembered something Miguel told me long ago. Dogs are family, Clara. They never give up on the ones they love. Before anyone could react, I reached into the pocket of Miguel's jacket and pulled out his old emergency whistle. The shrill, piercing sound shot through the cavern like a gunshot. In an instant, everything happened at once. The dog launched itself at the leader, a blur of fur and fury. From somewhere deeper in the cave, whistles began to answer mine, and a familiar voice, gruffer but unmistakable, shouted my name. I stumbled back as a flood of light poured into the chamber. Rescue teams swarmed in from multiple passages, led by Joao and federal agents. Within moments, the three men were subdued and in handcuffs. Then I saw him. A figure emerging from a deeper tunnel, leaning heavily on a makeshift cane. His hair was streaked with gray, but his eyes were unchanged. Miguel, I breathed, running to him. He was thinner, older, but his smile was the same. Our dog, our loyal buddy, darted between us, his tail wagging furiously. "I'm so sorry, Clara," Miguel said, as I threw my arms around him. "They threatened you. If I went public, they would have hurt you. I had to protect you, protect the discovery, but I always knew you'd find the truth." He stroked the shepherd's head. "And Buddy here never stopped trying to get help." I looked at the dog in amazement. "He was my research partner before all this." Miguel's voice cracked. "When they trapped me down here, he escaped. He's been our guardian angel ever since, guiding lost hikers away and watching over you." He looked at Buddy. "He even brought you my jacket when he knew you were safe. Didn't you, boy?" Buddy barked, nuzzling against us as Miguel pulled me close. Joao approached, his face a mask of relief and worry. "Miguel's coded messages on that pen drive helped us bring down their whole operation," he said. "Corporate espionage, kidnapping, illegal mining. They're going away for a long time." "And the mineral deposits?" I asked. "Are they safe? Will they be studied properly?" Miguel squeezed my hand. "They will. But first, I think I owe you 4 years of catching up." As the rescue team secured the site, documenting the incredible crystal formations, Miguel, Buddy, and I began our long climb back to the surface. The storm had passed, and sunlight streamed into the cave entrance, the very same one Buddy had led me to, carrying a jacket filled with secrets and hope. "Welcome back," I whispered, helping Miguel step into the light. Buddy barked joyfully, leading the way back down the mountain trail toward our home, where 2 cups of coffee would finally have a new meaning. 1 year later, I stand on our porch, watching Miguel and Buddy play fetch in the afternoon sun. Miguel's limp is barely noticeable now, though he still uses a cane on colder days. Buddy, officially ours, is happy and content, though he still patrols the property every night, our ever-faithful guardian. The discovery in the crystal cave changed everything, not just for us, but for science. Miguel's research, now properly documented and peer-reviewed, has revolutionized energy storage technology. The cave itself is a protected research site, welcoming students and scientists from around the world to study its unique formations. But the real healing happened in the quiet moments. The night Miguel finally told me everything. How he survived in the cave, using his geological knowledge to find safe water and shelter. How Buddy brought him food and supplies. How he kept hope alive by writing letters he could never send. "I talk to you every day," he confessed as we sat on the porch, telling me about the crystals and my own theories. "I always knew you would understand." The corporate executives who orchestrated his kidnapping were convicted last month. Miguel insisted on attending the trial, standing tall as he gave his testimony. Buddy lay at his feet, as loyal as he had been through those long years in the cave. "Coffee, Miguel," I call from inside, breaking my reverie. "Coming," he replies with a smile, as Buddy trots up the porch steps, carrying Miguel's old blue jacket. It's become his favorite toy, even after we insisted on washing it. Sometimes he still brings it inside, as if to remind us how he helped put our family back together. Inside, Miguel is organizing his research notes. The university has asked him to write a book about his discovery, a story of both the science and the human spirit, a tale of two passions. He's titled it Geology and Loyalty, of Minerals and Love. "Do you know what today is?" he asks, handing me a mug of coffee. "It's Thursday," I reply. He smiles and shakes his head. "It's been 1 year since Buddy brought you my jacket. 1 year since you followed a stubborn old dog into a cave and found me." Buddy wags his tail at the sound of his name. Even as his muzzle begins to gray, his eyes shine as brightly as ever. "I've been thinking," Miguel continues, "about mysteries and faith, about how sometimes the things we can't explain with science are the most important, like a dog that never gave up." Stroking Buddy's head, I tease, "Like a wife who never stopped searching?" Miguel pulls me closer. "And a love," he corrects gently, "that not even 4 years of darkness could extinguish." Outside, the mountains stand against the evening sky, their secrets a little less hidden now. Buddy heads for the door, ready for his nightly patrol, but he doesn't go alone anymore. Miguel and I walk with him, our little family whole again, retracing the paths that brought us back to each other. Some say it was science that saved Miguel, his knowledge, the evidence that brought down his captors. Others say it was love, my refusal to give up, and Buddy's unwavering loyalty. I think it was all of it, the most powerful forces of nature working in harmony. Just as pressure and time formed those extraordinary crystals, so too did devotion and persistence lead a dog to my door with a tattered blue jacket, guiding me back to the love I thought I had lost. Ready for our evening walk, Miguel holds out his hand. Buddy gives a single bark, and together, we step out into the soft twilight, following our faithful guide down a familiar trail, making new memories to replace the lost years. Some mysteries, I've learned, are not meant to be solved. They are meant to be lived. One simply had to believe in them, in the love between a man and a woman, and the unwavering devotion of a dog who refused to let them be parted.